In 1944, a group of fighter pilots started painting fake bullet holes and smoke damage onto their aircraft to trick the German Luftwaffe into attacking them. It was March 15, 1944. High above the industrial heartland of Brunswick, Germany, Captain James "Red" Holt wrestled his P-47 Thunderbolt into a tight turn, his gaze sweeping the enormous empty dome of the sky. Below him, 800 B-17 flying fortresses lumbered toward their targets. This vast metallic herd carried thousands of young Americans and enough explosive power to level whole districts. Holt, flying escort for the 359th Fighter Squadron, knew the enemy was out there. He could feel the tension, the silence before the strike. The numbers were catastrophic. Since the turn of the year, the 8th Air Force had lost nearly 300 heavy bombers, a human cost of over 2,000 crewmen. The escort fighters, like Holt's group, simply couldn't guard every vulnerable spot at once. The German Luftwaffe had learnt this, and they had developed a cold, terrifying new approach. Their tactic was simple: bypass the healthy formations and ignore the screens of P-51s and P-47s. Instead, they targeted the weak. They hunted the stragglers, the damaged bombers lagging behind the main group, the crippled birds sputtering oil smoke, engines feathered and props still. These were easy kills, predictable and defenseless. The day before, Holt had witnessed a horrifying scene. 6 Focke-Wulf 190s descending on a battered B-17 known as Memphis Belle II. It took the German pilots less than a minute to tear the fortress apart. Intelligence briefings this morning confirmed the pattern across dozens of missions. German pilots were selectively focusing their aggression solely on aircraft already showing signs of combat stress. They refused to engage a strong, intact fighter screen. The brutal logic was undeniable. If American fighters protected healthy bombers, the Luftwaffe waited. But when planes displayed damage, the Germans immediately pounced, often attacking miles away from where the official escorts were positioned. By the time Holt's squadron received the distress call and raced to the scene, it was always too late. "We are not defending the aircraft that need help the most," Holt mumbled into his oxygen mask. What he or anyone in the 359th didn't yet realize was that in just 4 hours, a 24-year-old former commercial artist from Brooklyn, someone with zero flight experience, would scratch an idea onto a cocktail napkin that would completely reverse this deadly equation. An idea so counterintuitive that when it was first formally suggested, the squadron commander would dismiss it as the most foolish proposal he had ever heard. This simple, audacious scheme involved nothing more than paint, theatrical effects, and deploying one of the most ancient strategies of conflict, making your strength appear to be a profound weakness. Within 30 days, this controversial deception would bait 40 German fighters into meticulously planned ambushes. It would directly save the lives of an estimated 180 American airmen. It would also technically violate several articles of established warfare convention and would remain classified as a top-secret program for 47 years. This is the story of how one squadron chose to camouflage their planes by painting them to look crippled, and in doing so, turned the most efficient hunters in the sky into the helpless prey. The core of this crisis didn't emerge in March 1944. It started much earlier. It started with a German ace named Hermann Joseph "Pips" Priller. In late 1943, Priller recognized something the Allied strategists had yet to grasp. He understood that damaged bombers exhibited highly predictable behavior. "A healthy bomber fights," Priller wrote in a tactical memo distributed to his group, Jagdbeschwader 26. "A crippled bomber flees. It separates from its group. Its escort cannot protect what is out of reach. We do not pursue the strong, we call the weak. The results were immediate and horrifying. In January 1944 alone, almost 3/4 of all bombers lost over Reich territory were isolated aircraft, stragglers that had fallen out of formation due to severe battle damage, mechanical failure, or incapacitated crew. The Luftwaffe quickly formalized these wolf pack procedures specifically to exploit this vulnerability. German fighters would orbit far away, patiently watching, waiting for the unmistakable visual indicators, the telltale plume of white smoke, the distinct shape of a feathered propeller, or an aircraft slowly shedding altitude. Then and only then they would strike. American Fighter Command attempted every conventional countermeasure they could devise. They designated dedicated rescue fighters to shepherd wounded bombers home. The Germans merely waited until those escort ships reached their maximum fuel range and were forced to turn back. They increased the density of fighter patrols across known bomber routes. The Germans simply infiltrated the gaps. They tried implementing new radio protocols for damaged aircraft to request urgent help. The Germans effectively jammed the emergency frequencies. Major General William Kepner, the commander of 8th Air Fighter Command, convened an emergency summit on February 28, 1944. Gentlemen, we face a problem that standard tactical responses cannot solve. The enemy has successfully turned our wounded into irresistible bait. Every crippled bomber, Kepner noted, became an automatic death warrant for its crew and endangered any fighter sent to aid it. The unanimous opinion among established experts was that the primary solution must be prevention. Better ballistic armor, tighter formation discipline, increased defensive ordnance. But these were complex engineering challenges that required months, even years to implement. Meanwhile, bomber crews continued to die daily. Squadron commanders were driven to desperation. Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Dickman of the 359th, Holt's commander, famously hurled his officer's cap across the briefing room after losing 3 fighters while desperately trying to defend a lone damaged B-24. They are using our injured men as lethal traps. We rush to help and suddenly we are overwhelmed and out of gas. It is brilliant, utterly ruthless, and I have no damn idea how to stop it. The logical consensus among career tactical thinkers became grimly clear. There was no counter-strategy except to abandon the stragglers entirely. Several senior officers quietly proposed instituting a policy of survival of the fittest. Damaged aircraft must be left to fend for themselves. This horrifying suggestion eventually landed on General Dwight Eisenhower's desk. He crossed it out entirely, writing just one word across the proposal in thick red pencil: never. But moral sentiment, however noble, did not save lives. The casualties mounted. By mid-March, many bomber crewmen expressed a deeper dread of being crippled than of being immediately shot down. At least destruction, they reasoned, was fast. Becoming crippled meant enduring a slow 30-minute retreat across enemy territory while German fighters circled, methodically chipping away at the aircraft, and while friends perished, futilely to reach you. The psychological trauma became quantifiable. Mission abortion rates soared. Pilots began reporting phantom battle damage that ground crews could not confirm. Some crews openly requested transfers to the Pacific Theater, where they claimed bitterly, at least the enemy followed recognizable combat rules. Into this atmosphere of tactical despair walked Technical Sergeant Daniel Weiss, 24 years old, a former commercial artist who had worked for the renowned J.W. Thompson Agency. He was now a crew chief for the 359th Fighter Squadron. Weiss possessed absolutely no combat flight experience. He was responsible for maintaining hydraulic systems and painting victory markings on the fuselages. But he held a degree from Cooper Union, 3 years of professional experience crafting deceptive advertising campaigns, and most critically, the fresh perspective of an outsider unburdened by the institutional assumptions of the military. When aircraft returned from brutal missions, Weiss was the one who surveyed the structural damage, coordinating repairs to rush the planes back into service. Over half a year, he had learned to interpret battle damage like a unique visual language. He knew exactly what flak bursts looked like on aluminum skin. He knew the typical cluster patterns of 20mm cannon fire. He had identified the clear difference between catastrophic damage and purely theatrical damage. The evening of March 15th, he was seated in a corner of the officers' club, a place technically restricted to enlisted men. Captain Holt led the decoy flight. His P-47, conspicuously painted with large fake bullet holes along the fuselage and generating plumes of white theatrical smoke, took up a position 2,000 yards behind the main bomber stream. He pulled the throttle back to 180 knots, an airspeed dangerously slow for a fighter aircraft in combat, but absolutely perfect for mimicking severe battle damage. He activated the smoke generator. A vaporous white trail streamed from his engine cowling, clearly visible for miles against the blue sky. At 24,000 feet, Lieutenant James Fisher orbited with the hunter element, scrutinizing Holt's performance through his binoculars. "He appears genuinely crippled," Fisher radioed quietly. "If I didn't know better, I'd be transmitting an urgent call for rescue." They did not have long to wait. At 13:47 hours, German radar operators instantly reported an American fighter exhibiting severe damage, falling behind formation and steadily losing altitude. The report shot immediately up the chain of command to Jagdgeschwader 1. Hauptmann Hannes Baer, a renowned 179-kill ace, scrambled 6 Bf-109s. This was standard operating doctrine for him: easy kill, minimal risk, guaranteed morale boost for his unit. Baer spotted Holt's smoking aircraft from nearly 8 miles away. The P-47 wobbled slightly, dropping gradually toward a layer of thick cloud cover. Textbook behavior for a wounded aircraft. Baer did not hesitate. He led his formation into the classic attack position: 6 German fighters against 1 apparently crippled American. At 12,000 feet, Holt deliberately maintained his performance. He could clearly see the German formation forming up above and behind him, positioning themselves for the perfect killing dive. His right hand remained on the throttle lever. His left gripped the control stick. Every single instinct screamed at him to break formation, to run, to immediately begin fighting defensively. Instead, he kept up his wounded bird act, maintaining absolute faith that 8 P-47s he couldn't see were observing his every move. The Germans dove. Baer lined up his optimal shot, closing the distance to 400 yards, an almost guaranteed kill. He had shot down 179 Allied aircraft in his career. This would be number 180. Then Lieutenant Fisher's voice sliced across the radio frequency. "Now!" Holt instantly slammed the throttle lever completely forward. The seemingly crippled P-47 exploded into full power. The theatrical smoke generator immediately cut off, and suddenly he wasn't wounded at all. He transformed instantly into a 2,500 horsepower fighter doing 400 mph and rapidly climbing. The fake damaged panels, the cellulose acetate sheets, were instantly ripped away and vanished in the powerful slipstream. In less than 3 seconds, Captain Holt transitioned from victim to a predator ready to pounce. The 6 German fighters had exactly 1 second to process this impossible transformation before 8 P-47s, the hunter element, screamed out of the brilliant sun at 450 mph, their throttles pushed to war emergency power. Baer instinctively broke hard right, but it was far too late. Fisher's initial burst of machine gun fire caught the German ace's Bf-109 directly in the left wing, shredding the control surfaces. Baer, being the highly skilled pilot he was, managed a semi-controlled crash landing in a muddy field near Osnabrück. His wingman, Lieutenant Werner Schmidt, was not so fortunate. 2 P-47s bracketed him simultaneously. His fighter instantly disintegrated. The planned ambush lasted exactly 90 seconds. When the melee concluded, 4 German fighters were confirmed destroyed, 1 severely damaged, 1 pilot dead, 3 captured, and 2 managed to escape the scene. American losses? 0. Not a single bullet hole was sustained on any P-47. The gun camera footage from this mission was studied for hours by intelligence officers who could barely believe the visual evidence. A crippled aircraft that was not crippled, an ambush executed in open sky, German veterans flying directly into a textbook trap they should have identified instantly. Within 48 hours, Hauptmann Baer was rigorously debriefed by Luftwaffe intelligence. His detailed report was immediately distributed to every single fighter group across Germany. The warning was stark and simple. American fighters are now employing advanced deception tactics. Aircraft visually displaying battle damage may be fully operational bait for ambush. We strongly recommend extreme caution when engaging apparently damaged enemy aircraft. But the essential warning arrived too late. The tactical innovation was already spreading like wildfire. March 24th. 3 decoy missions launched over Bremen. 6 German fighters destroyed, 2 probables claimed. American losses, 1 P-47 with extremely minor flak damage. March 27th. 2 decoy missions protecting B-24s en route to Mannheim. 8 German fighters destroyed. American losses, 0. March 29th, a massive coordinated air operation. 6 squadrons were now fully trained in decoy tactics. 12 decoy aircraft were flying across the bomber stream perimeter. The Luftwaffe lost 17 confirmed fighters that day. American bomber losses were the lowest recorded in 3 months. The resulting statistical data became utterly undeniable and impossible to ignore. Before the deployment of decoy tactics, January 1st to March 15, 1944, average bomber losses per mission, 5.2%. Average fighter loss ratio, 1.3 to 1, German kills versus American. Straggler survival rate, 27%. After the deployment of decoy tactics, March 22nd to April 15, 1944, average bomber losses per mission, 2.8%. Fighter loss ratio, 4.7 to 1, American kills in favor. Straggler survival rate, 73%. The 359th Fighter Squadron alone claimed 40 confirmed kills in just 30 days, a rate that typically required 6 months of intensive operations. More significantly, bomber crews began reporting that German fighters were displaying palpable hesitation, second-guessing potential attacks, and frequently breaking off aggressive pursuits that they previously would have chased relentlessly. A captured German pilot, Lieutenant Klaus Hartmann, told interrogators on April 3rd, "We cannot trust our sight anymore. What appears weak may be strong. What looks wounded is invariably a trap. We are commanded to be aggressive, but how can we execute aggression when aggression leads only to ambush? They have effectively turned our most successful tactic against us." The psychological success mirrored the tactical success. German fighters started actively avoiding damaged-looking aircraft altogether, which meant that genuinely damaged bombers survived far more often. The Luftwaffe's highly effective Wolfpack doctrine, which had dominated the skies for 4 months, functionally collapsed in less than 3 weeks. By April 15th, every fighter group in the 8th Air Force had at least 1 squadron fully trained and operating under the decoy protocol. The tactical innovation quickly spread to the 9th Air Force and soon after to the Royal Air Force, eventually reaching the Mediterranean theater. Maintenance crews rapidly became experts in applying theatrical damage that could be instantly removed and meticulously reapplied between missions. And throughout this entire expansion, Technical Sergeant Daniel Weiss quietly ran his classified workshop in Hangar 7, training crews in the complex art of visual deception, teaching them to deliberately make strength look like vulnerability. He taught them that sometimes the best form of camouflage isn't hiding your existence, it is strategically lying about your condition. The specific immediate impact of this singular innovation saved an estimated 180 bomber crewmen in just the first 30 days of its widespread use. If you are enjoying this deep exploration of psychological warfare and tactical innovation, please take a moment to hit the like button and share this video. We are Winds of Thought, a small team committed to sharing these crucial, often overlooked stories, and your engagement is what directly fuels this work. We've included source materials and pilot memoirs linked in the description below. Now, let us discuss the profound aftermath and the legacy that continued long after the conflict ended. The final statistics compiled after VE Day told a story that military tactical manuals would study for generations to come. Between March 22, 1944 and May 8, 1945, squadrons utilizing the decoy equipment achieved 247 confirmed aerial victories with a highly favorable loss ratio of 6.2 to 1, the highest ratio achieved by any single tactical innovation in the European theater. An estimated 890 bomber crewmen survived missions they were statistically unlikely to survive, a result directly attributed to the reduced German aggression caused by the uncertainty of the decoy tactics. But the individual human stories are always more powerful than the raw statistics. Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Dickman, the commander who had authorized the initial risky trial, retired from service as a brigadier general in 1963. In his unpublished memoir, he wrote, "We spent years and millions of dollars developing superior armor, more powerful guns, and better engines. A sergeant with a simple art degree and a cocktail napkin decisively beat all that with nothing but paint and psychology. The most effective weapon is almost always the one the enemy